Thank you. Perfect. So I'm Councilmember Ben Kallos. Most know me as at Ben Kallos. Even my colleagues in the City Council call me at Ben Kallos. Wanted to touch on is making sure that as you talk to elected officials, you make sure that the elected officials are doing community events. Every summer, you will actually find me out in the community tabling at street fairs, and I even do cooking with Kallos. Anyone hear about healthy food? I'm way into healthy food, so much so that I'll even do so. And in fact, one of the things that we figured out is that most people don't know what elected officials do. Does anyone here know who their city council member is? Actually, about half the room. That's pretty sizable. So the thing that I realized is most people don't know what a city council member is or what they do. So we actually started making these cards and handing them out at street fairs. So I only have 2 left. I had a presentation before that, and they kind of cleaned me out. So I will pass these around, and the 2 people from the press are welcome to keep them. But it goes into some of the government programs that we offer, as well as the fact that I actually do First Fridays with them. 8 a.m., 10 a.m., first Friday of every month, you can actually sit there and have a conversation with me. That's actually what one of the conversations looks like. We actually have all sorts of different folks. You will notice a lot of white hair. 50% of my district is over 50. So we do that. We also do policy night. This is an opportunity for people in person to give me feedback on policies they'd like to see happen. We've already had some policies made by members of our community. The other piece is making sure that we offer resources. So one thing we can do is make sure that when people come to our office, they get free resources. One of them is these. We have 24 million of these that we give out every year. So this is the New York City condom. We have my site as an official New York City condom distribution site. And before you say, well, why are we spending so much money on, here, take some and pass it around. Why spend so much money on condoms? $24 million and 24 million condoms has to cost something. The quick answer is it's public health. With more than 1 in 5 people having STDs, not to mention pregnancy, but it gives people a choice. I was endorsed by NAREL as well as Planned Parenthood of New York City, and it's part of the commitment making sure that we do have access to public health, and it's for everybody. I was originally a little bit concerned that seniors wouldn't be as into them and might be offended, but I literally just came from a senior event which cleaned out half my supply. The other piece is making sure you do forums and outreach in the community. So again, everything you do online has to be grounded in person-to-person contact, as well as making sure that you're dealing with people in the way that they like to communicate. So a lot of people like to be in person, meet their elected official in person. Anyone here, just out of curiosity, so who here would be happier if Barack Obama met them and took a picture with them versus got tweeted by Obama? So who here would rather get tweeted by Obama than meet him in person? Okay, so there's 4 hands. How many people would rather meet President Obama than get tweeted by him? So there's more hands. So again, even in a room that is very tech-centric, it's still about in person. So this is our senior health fair. We bring a lot of services to the seniors, and a lot of focus is on seniors. So this is my website. It's benkallos.com. It's based on Drupal. It is my site. I built it. It is I got on the internet in 1994. It is not mobile first. I know mobile first is the thing. I'm working on it. But the key piece here is it's Drupal, so you can reskin it if you want. If anyone has ideas for a theme, it's an open office, so we'd love to have you. One piece is we have a solutions platform. So anyone in my district or any one of you can go onto my website, register, and suggest a solution. And we're trying to reorient. So the idea is go on. You can vote on other people's solutions. You can comment on them. But the real idea is to give people an opportunity to be engaged. So we've done this. There are a lot of different products that do very similar things. There's also there's so many different products out there. There's Democracy OS, there's Lumio, I could go on. But there's a lot of people who replicate this feature, but we've got it here, and it's part of how I ran my campaign, and I brought it with me. We have 135 solutions on the site. 100 came from me, 35 came from the community. We also can build apps. So it's a Drupal site. So you wake up one morning and say, here's a problem, so you add a feature. In this place, we just added, anyone here a Drupal developer too? Okay, wow. Anyone here a developer? Okay, and actually while I'm doing this, so we've got about a third developers in the room. And then who are the other folks? If you can just shout out and then see who else raises their hand. What? CUNY, so students. No, actually. Perfect, so we have education. Anyone here in education? So we have 2 folks, and where are you from? Awesome, and?
Senior Planet.
Perfect. Okay, so we have education folks. Any other sectors represented here? Yeah? Architecture? 3D printing? Federal government, where? God bless you. Design, anyone who does design? So for you designers, if you can help me make my site more design friendly or take it mobile first, you can drag me kicking and screaming and I will probably go along with it. Yeah?
Local government.
Which local?
Do it.
Perfect. Who do you work with?
Steve Besman.
Okay.
Don Sunderland.
Perfect. Those are actually 2 of my favorite people. They are the only people, very few people in government who I've met who did not look at me funny when I said the word free and open source. They were all on board with it. So this was just basically just creating a data point that had pieces, and this allowed people to identify places they felt unsafe along 2nd Avenue. One of the first things I did when I got elected is we did a physical walk down 2nd Avenue and ended up finding a lot of dangerous intersections. Sadly, 2 weeks afterwards, somebody actually died in an intersection, and it was an intersection we had missed, and no matter how proactive you are, you always miss something. So that being said, this work is important. You can literally save lives. Other pieces was we have petition sites, we also have micro lists, and then participatory budgeting. Is it okay if we close the door just so I don't get distracted by the music, which is awesome? This is the first Code Across that has its own soundtrack. So who here knows about participatory budgeting? Okay, so for those of you who don't know, how many of you are New York City residents? Okay, how many of you want $1 million? I only see 3 hands. I'm going to split it up between the 3 of you. The rest of you don't get. So that's what government really is about. Whoever raises their hand, it's a duocracy. So participatory budgeting, 23 council members have gotten together and we're giving away $1 million in capital funding. It doesn't pay for people, it pays for desks, it pays for buildings, it pays for new parks, new schools. So anyone over 16, it's not limited to registered voters. So in my district, I have 168,000 people, but I only have 90,000 registered voters, so 70,000 of the people, plus anyone under 16. And so we do a vote, that's last year's ballot. Things that won, bus time clocks. So anyone here use bus time? So a lot of the people in my district are seniors. They were more interested in having it displayed for them than having to take out a phone and send a text message. So there's that. We also got a lot of funding for our senior centers and then schools. A lot of the number 3 vote getter was getting STEM for our schools. And so we allow people to propose ideas on the website, propose a participatory budgeting idea, and then apply for funding. We actually just had our deadline. There's at least 1 applicant in this room. So in addition to the $1 million, I have money. I can give that money to nonprofits in my district or to schools in the district. I can give it to DOE. I don't really think I can give it to Do It. I can give it to Department for the Aging, but and I can give it to nonprofits. So I've been working and I've been reaching out to every nonprofit I can think of. Has anyone heard of Civic CRM?
What is it called?
Civic CRM. It's a client relationship management tool. So I actually called Donald Lobo and Dave from Civic CRM, and I was like, hey, can I add features to Civic CRM Core? And they said yes. So we actually have an application from Civic CRM to improve it, and hopefully we'll be able to provide funding for them. Anyone here like Open Congress? So I like Open Congress. I'm a huge fan. I'm just going to mention we're joined by David Moore, who actually is the person behind it. And so we are actually hoping that they will be able to build it for the city, because wouldn't it be great to have Open Congress for state, city, and local legislatures? So we have our exempt. We have two types of funding. One funding is for people, and that's a little bit less. It's called expense funding than capital, which is just, I want to build a new fountain and things like that. So the thing we do differently is you can actually see every single person I gave money to. So we post it both in plain text, ODS, and XLS. So you can go see how I allocated about $5 million last year. I'm working on making the budget for the city of New York, which is a little bit bigger. So this is a couple of billion. The city budget is $77 billion. So the goal would be for you to be able to hop on and just look at the budget and interact with it properly. I also like to have my legislation online, so you can go to benkallos.com/legislation. It's up there as content types, and you can comment on it. But that wasn't enough. Anyone here know who Clay Shirky is? So I was kind of inspired by him, and so we posted my legislation on GitHub. I challenge everyone here, so please go to github.com/benkallos/legislation, pull my legislation, edit it, treat it just like the software code that it is, which operates government, and push it back, and let's make some laws. So that's one piece. We actually haven't had many contributions. That if you saw that on a Git repository for a code base, you might look at that and say, okay, this code is pretty old. We probably shouldn't use it. But it's code. It's legislative code, not software code, but it operates our democracy, and you have a chance to play a role in it. So I can do it myself, but it's hard to get it to happen because I have to convince 50 other council members. So I started to get together with some other folks from all over the country, and I found a bunch of Civic hackers who made it into government. So I found a guy over in Mark Farrell, and I was actually over at the Brooklyn Law Intellectual Property Incubator and Legal Clinic with Jonathan Askin. Anyone familiar with that? So they do a legal hacking meetup. You should go check it as a convener. And he helped us found the Free Law Founders. So with support from Participatory Politics Foundation, David Moore, as well as Sunlight Foundation, Open Government Foundation, we created the Free Law Founders. And the idea is to use technology to improve democracy and citizen engagement and create a free and open source digital democracy platform for legislation, law, and whatnot. And actually, we are focused nationally, but at the same time, the United Kingdom just created a Digital Democracy Commission, and we are working with them to make sure that whatever they do in the United Kingdom, we do here. So it's pretty awesome. We've been growing. This was a slide I made a couple months back. I think we've already doubled our membership. But we have DC legislators, Maryland legislators, the Chicago City Clerk, and it's growing. So if you know anybody in any legislature, be it New Jersey or Long Island or Westchester or people all over the country, we are growing. And the reason this is important is because when I do something here, I can then give it to my friend Mark or another one, and we're kind of open sourcing the law and creating a culture of peer pressure. Because just because I'm the only one here out of 50 members, there's me, there's Gail Brewer, there's a couple of others. But other people are like, who cares? It's just one or two people and a bunch of civic hackers. But when I'm able to say, hey, San Francisco's doing it, and Maryland's doing it, and Chicago's doing it, and Boston's doing it, everyone else is like, I guess we should get with the program. So it's a lot of fun. The bigger we get, the more we can get done, and it's a national movement. So part of why I needed to organize this was so we could get legislative reform in the city. So when I got elected, we passed new rules. And we passed open legislation, which for increasing transparency and accountability, fair allocation of funding to encourage participatory budgeting, and this one was key, and I'm sorry to keep name dropping David Moore's name, but he kept saying that this was one of the most important pieces we could get, which is an open API on our legislative framework. Has anyone been on the legislative system for the city council? So I see. Hi, Jay, how are you? So we have 3 members of the press in this room, so nothing I say is off the record. So there's a system called Legistar, and it's run by a company called Granicus. And one of the things that frustrates me a little bit is that we keep paying vendors to rebuild the same software and over again, which my friends that do it also probably dislike, I hope. But anyway, we fought for an open API, and we actually needed the free law founders to get together to say, no, we want this on a national level, because Granicus was a large enough vendor at the time that it wasn't one of their top priority items. But if New York City and San Francisco and Chicago and everyone else using it said they wanted it, it was one of those things where eventually they were going to do it. With an open API, it means their front end becomes less and less relevant. We're also working on an open technology plan. We passed a rules reform in March of last year. We still haven't launched it. All of you, let your elected officials know that you want that open technology plan. It's something we need to do. So the next thing is we passed open law. This was originally introduced by Brad Lander. Has anyone here ever tried to look up the law? Did you find it? So the reason you didn't find it is because, so once upon a time, anyone recognize this?
Hammurabi's Code.
This is Hammurabi's Code. So this started off with the concept that ignorance of the law is no excuse. So we had to make it available to people. And how amazing it was that we could fit the law on one tablet. So move to the 19th century, and the way we did it is we put it on books like these and filled entire rooms with books, and anyone could go to those libraries. The concept of a free library is uniquely American. If you go to England, there's membership libraries. So here the idea you could go to a free library where anyone can do it. And actually New York City still has membership libraries. But so in the 19th century, we put it in libraries. Has anyone been in a library in the past week? Month? Year? Okay, so I'd say about 75% of the room. How many of you use the internet, use Google as your primary source of finding information? So that's where we come in. So the reason you couldn't find it online is because of this. And they charge. But the law is free, right? Right? Am I right? So they have copyright by license. By virtue of the fact that you are accessing through our website, there is a license agreement that says you're not allowed to take it because they did it. And that's been upheld by the courts, unfortunately. So as a result, in 2005, I started at wikilaw.org because I was angry at them. And then I ended up merging it with jurispedia.org. And then Google Scholar came along and kind of changed the marketplace there. But it's been 10 years, and I was proud to pass open law, which says the city's law is going to be available online in a computer-readable format by the end of the year. The law department, which I have oversight over, is currently working, and we are looking at probably putting out an RFP somewhere around the $200,000 mark for anyone who can help us with maintaining and hosting our laws in the city of New York. So if anyone's interested, you heard it here first. We also took the city record. Who here knows what the city record is? Wow, okay, so for the rest of you, that's the city record. And this gets mailed to elected official and community boards so that if you want to see it, you can go read it. Can you just raise your hands again and keep them up if you read if you know what the city record is? Okay, keep your hand up if you read it every day cover to cover. But this is the city record. This is how you know what's happening in your neighborhood. If you do not read it every single day, every single word, they might take your building and turn it into an interspatial highway. And it's your fault because you missed it. It was on file at Alpha Centauri. Why did you miss this? Because this isn't how we interact with information anymore. So it's going to be online. We're working with the people here at Beta NYC to make sure that the old archives go online, and then moving forward by the end of the year, it'll have to be up there. I actually sat down with our friends at DCAST who published this and taught them how to normalize data. The first version will not have normalized the data, which makes me sad, but government is incremental. Next slide. And it goes to every single household. This year, there really wasn't any there weren't any city elections, so we actually did it online. And you can go online. It saved the city a couple $1 million. And then we also did agency-based voter registration. So we passed a law in 2001 called the Pro Voter Law, saying agencies had to register people to vote. And 14 years later, it had gone unenforced, so now it's actually going to be enforced. So that's what I've done so far in my first 1 year, 1 month, and 21 days. Thank you. But there's more. So I've been working with Beta NYC and the Transparency Working Group on open FOIL. This means that when you send a FOIL request, it automatically goes online. Instead of having to beg for information, it's just there. Electronic Notices Act and the Public Online Information Act says that anytime there's a notification, it should be online. And if it's public information, it isn't in a file cabinet, it isn't available for inspection. We just scan it, leave it there so you can find it. I will need your help on a lot of these. OpenGIS. My first week in the council, we had a debate in the body about whether or not to add a checkbox to tickets to denote whether or not something happened in a city park, whether or not a violation happened in a city park. Because that way we could tell whether it happened in a park. But Central Park's kind of big. So it was one of those things where I was just like, why are we arguing over a checkbox when we could just take the where it happens? It's not that this intersection is dangerous, it's that the northwest corner, about 3 feet into the intersection, is where 3 or 4 people were hit by a car. And maybe we should do something about that. So again, the more information we have, the better. I want to do online voter registration so badly it hurts, and also tracking absentee ballots. Has anyone ever voted absentee? Keep your hands up. How many of you know that your absentee ballot was counted? You're telling me your right to vote, you took the time to vote, to request an absentee ballot, have it mailed, mail it back, and you don't even know if it was counted? Yes, one person knows that, so this would allow that to happen. Last piece, so anyone know about Civic Commons? Commons is the concept that government should buy things once. We should buy code, we should license it free and open source, and we should build a central code repository. And then similarly, the Free and Open Source Software Act. So hopefully Noel will read the, but these are the pieces I need your help with most. The ones that I prioritized are open FOIL and the Civic Commons Free and Open Source Software Act. Does anyone here use free and open source software? The Microsoft license is over $60 million. Imagine if we gave that $60 million to LibreOffice or your favorite free and open source software product. That much capital would have a transformational effect that would bring it on par with any type of software. And we're not paying for a profit margin. We're paying for developer time, whether it's for a city employee or for somebody in the private sector, to contribute to a code base that every single government throughout the city, state, federal level, and every single city, 300 of us across the country, could use. Where instead of us paying for the same code over and over again, we could build a single code base. Or, I'm all about competition. There's Drupal, there's Joomla, there's WordPress. We could build an ecosystem of different government products that are free and open source, but the difference is that when we add a feature, we own the feature, and we can change the feature, and we can modify it, and we don't have to go through a developer. And if we don't like a developer, we can fire that developer and hire somebody else to work on that same code base. So I've been reaching out to people like Red Hat. And when I reached out to Red Hat and said, I need you on board, they actually said, reach out to Beta NYC and mobilize your activists. So I need all of you to try to explain to your elected officials, to anyone who will listen, to those of you in agencies, to your commissioners, why free and open source matters, and why that product that they're making you use, that's a piece of garbage because it's proprietary code that hasn't been updated in 10 years and you don't have freedom to modify it for your own needs, is the way of the past. So I need your help on that. I'm also trying to activate big companies. So I'm reaching out to Red Hat, I'm reaching out to Collabra, I'm reaching out to Acquia, and I'm saying you are the biggest open source vendors, and while you're just doing your own thing and doing the best job you can, Microsoft, Oracle, and other big proprietary vendors are there lobbying government day in and day out, making contributions, paying for events and things like that, but they're not, and their voice isn't present. I actually asked LibreOffice, how do people keep adopting LibreOffice? Are you lobbying? And when austerity showed up and IT directors were told they could fire their entire department or find money, all of a sudden they didn't need a Microsoft license anymore. Now that the economy is back on the upswing, Microsoft's shown up and said, oh, we'd like to donate a lot of software and computers and things like that, but we really need you to adopt our license. And what do you know? Austerity is, we're on the other cycle. We're in an expansion right now. So I need your help on free and open source. I need your help on all of these to make them past. I think this is what I was able to do in 1 year on my own, but I need your help for the rest. Key piece, hat tip to Brad Lander. He is the one for me, and it was something he wanted to see as well. And then we'll open it up, is I'm working with NYU's GovLab. Anyone heard of GovLab? So GovLab is like the dream for every civic hacker. It's being run by somebody named Beth Novick. Anyone here know who Beth Novick is? Oh, wow. Okay, Beth Novick is like a superstar. If you don't know her, you should. Please Google her. Please mention her on Twitter. She'll respond. She was the first person in charge of open government at the White House. So she is kind of a superstar. And I'm working with her. We're doing a coaching program. So anyone you know who's either already got a civic tech tool or who can implement somebody else's civic tech tool that's free and open source, or let's say you don't have one, but you'd like to build one. We have a coaching program. It's with me and Arnaud. Arnaud was from google.org. And so you will have access to us as well as guest speakers and support from GovLab itself. And we'd like to have you. The course starts the week of March 2nd to the 6th. And it's heavily coaching oriented, and there's a value proposition. I represent 168,000 people. In all honesty, I'm in a network of 8.4 million people. And when I've been doing things, people show up. My first Fridays has been capped for my district residents only, because we started having people showing up from all over New York City, because there was a chance to sit down and actually meet face-to-face with an elected official without paying them anything. Those of you who are more cynical than others understand the campaign finance implications there. But my district residents kept saying, well, you're spending a lot of time with people who don't live in the district, but you work for us. So we actually had to cut it to them. But this is open to anyone in New York City, New York State, United States, or globally. We'd love to work with you. So if you know anyone, I wanted to come and ask you, please join, please apply. We'd love to have you. Last piece, I think you all know what's coming. So ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. This is what civic hacking is all about. And so it's a call to action. We need you to build the tools that will power the 21st century democracy, and we also need you, if you're not going to build the tools, to be advocating for those tools to be built and used. If your legislator isn't on askthem.io, ask them why not. That's a tool where if you go on that website and ask me a question, it's another project of Participatory Politics Foundation, then you can hold me accountable for not answering your questions. If they're not doing in-person meetings and doing the 1.0 level, ask them why not. When I launched First Fridays, other legislators all over the city started doing it. The speaker now has Follow Me Fridays. We're trying to create a culture of peer pressure, showing people what government can look like, and it's up to you to demand the government that you want. So that's my speaking program. This is a town hall, which means you're supposed to also get an opportunity to speak. So at this point, I'd love to open it up for conversation. But beforehand, how many of you will be applying for the coaching program, if any?
Can you go back to that slide with the coaching program?
Yes. So it's at GovLab Academy and tweeted about it. So anyone interested in the coaching program? Yeah?
Is that a full-time, like Monday, Friday night?
No, it's 2 hours every 2 weeks. It's a minimal time commitment. What you're getting is a commitment from me that you'll have access to me to ask questions, and the fact that if your product meets MVP standards, I'll be implementing it in my district. Implementation is tough. You're all started with seeing that most of my district is over 50, but at least you get a test bed. At least you're able to show people, hey, I have an MVP, and it's already been tested in city council by Councilmember Ben Kallos, and 8.4 million people had access, and that's a pretty nice thing to be able to say as your initial piece, and you get what you put in, so you may have to try pretty hard, but at least you'll have feedback and you'll have an opportunity to show people what you've got. So there's that. So I saw a couple hands on the coaching program, and then how many people can I count on to help? Yeah.
What is it, what you just said that people should apply, what is it exactly?
It's a coaching program, so for 2 hours a week, you'll be working with myself and Arnaud, as well as GovLab, on either building an existing implementation of software you've already built, Civic Tech, or implementing somebody else's Civic Tech. So maybe there's a Drupal distribution called Open Public that's made for legislators. So maybe you don't like my site, maybe we should use Open Public, maybe it has better features, so maybe you want to implement somebody else's project. Or maybe you're sitting around and you're like, you know what? All that stuff is nothing, and I can do better than that, and give me 8 weeks and my team of programmers, and we can do that. And we can do better than Y Combinator. I think Y Combinator, is it a 3-month program, or is it 6 months? Does anyone know off the top? 3 months. So 3 months from pitching to MVP and funding. So love to have you. And so the other question is, who can I count on to help advocate for open foil?
Are you going to put that on GitHub, this legislation? You know,
It's already there.
That's already there.
All this is already there. If it isn't, let me know, and my staff will make sure it gets up there. We've actually gotten a couple of comments on the GitHub repo. If anyone wants to help be a product owner of my GitHub repo, we'd love to have that support. So, Open Foil says that every time a FOIL request happens, it goes online. Who here has ever sent a FOIL request? Okay, how many of you got something back? I only see 3 hands up. So one more time, how many have sent a FOIL request? So I see 6 hands. So half of you did not get what you wanted back. So Open Foil means your request goes online and everyone can see it. And then if your request has never been responded to, everyone sees that too. So it's one of those things where transparency would push it forward. And then to the extent you foiled something that somebody else has foiled again, we're calling it 3 strikes and you're in. So you foil President Obama's birth certificate once and nobody responds. You foil it a second time, nobody responds. Third time, they finally respond to all 3 of you, and then it just gets posted online so that you and every birther out there can see that he was born in Hawaii. So that's just one specific example. Usually, believe it or not, personal information would actually be exempted, but it's more like you want to know how much we're spending on salaries or things like that. So that's Open Foil. So is anyone interested in Open Foil? So if you would be considered advocating for that, advocacy means tweeting about it, letting your local elected, letting your city council member know, asking them to sign on, asking the speaker and the mayor. And then Civic Commons, Free and Open Source Software Act, that's my other priority. Anyone interested in seeing free and open source software in government? So I see a lot more hands for that. That's, believe it or not, is the one where there's the major disconnect. So please let your friends know, let your local elected officials know. If you're part of an organization that is larger than yourself, you can send me a letter, you can send a memorandum of support, and so those are my asks. And one of the things you learn in the startup world, anyone here have a startup? So whenever you go into a meeting, always have an ask, ABC, always be closing. Always walk in with your ask, always know what you're going to get, and there you go. So I am going to close with my remarks and open it up to the floor.
So, quick question. So we had a really good presentation from Ben Wellington.
Yes.
He went through a whole bunch of examples of analysis he did on publicly available data, how he sort of communicated that. Some of the data, there was different agencies involved. Some agencies promised to make a change. Some other agencies sort of didn't respond to him. And there's a variance there with what was happening with his analysis. So I guess my question to you is, do you see the kind of any way that the city can utilise such analysis that people like Ben is doing and use that for lobbying, not lobbying, but
lobbying is not.
And new legislation. Do you sort of see more of a role of that in
Sure.
the future?
So advocacy is when you do it uncompensated. Lobbying is when somebody's paying you for it. So we're all advocates in this room. So what Ben is doing is why we did open data, specifically to empower the civic community to take data, making it meaningful. One of the larger problems that we have is that there's a lot of data out there at this point, and it almost becomes noise. So I actually worked with the, who here likes has anyone here ever been late to a meeting or something because of the MTA? So whenever we complain to the MTA says, we don't know what you're talking about, the service is perfect. So we have bus time. Bus time was cool, so I said, okay, let me get access to the archival bus time. And they didn't have it. So I was like, this is weird. So then I started writing code to capture it and keep an archive. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm an elected official. I don't have time for this anymore. So I came to Beta NYC, and then is Nathan or Ash in the room? I don't have them in the room, but they put together a project which showed the service levels by bus using MTA archival data that Beta NYC had originally captured, and now the MTA is starting to release it, but they've only released 3 months worth, and I'm trying to get them to release more. So one piece is the MTA in particular, but government in general, has started to kind of do the easy thing of like, let's give the data out. I think there needs to be more of an increasing responsibility for government to actually analyze its own data, but in that time until we can do it, the key is to make sure that you have the data that you can analyze, visualize, use it to tell a story. And at least with my office, if you give me that data, we'll use it. Ultimately, if not, there are 3 reporters in this room. They live on something called scoops. It's like food or cash. And if you go to them and say, and if you say to them, I have a scoop, I figured out that this information in the open data portal proves that something they think is a lie or that this would change things, they will. And they are the 4th estate, and it will mean something. So first, you can give it to elected officials, but if the elected official doesn't listen, the 4th estate is your go-to place. And then you also have places like iQuant where you can start your own Tumblr. And like Ben Wellington is an amazing person. I'm a huge fan. And he just created, one of the great things about the internet is you can literally create your own message, and you don't even have to go through anybody else. But when you discover things, you can let people know. Somebody scraped all the data off Airbnb, then released it, and we're using it to make informed decisions around housing information. So this is a wonderful world where you can have a huge impact with a couple of lines of code. Next question.
So you mentioned working with NYU and their lab.
Yes.
I'm kind of curious as to how you're working and thinking about civic tech in this space in terms of working with the public universities like CUNY. Has there been any push for that? Because we have thousands of techie kids. So I'm just curious.
Yes. Set me up. If CUNY will do a similar program, I'm there tomorrow.
Okay.
You can hold me to that, and the only thing I want back from CUNY is to make our higher education free. The president, yes.
Obama's, but also, just so you're aware.
Yeah, I'm aware.
About 90% of students in CUNY, at least in our undergraduate programs, actually graduate with no debt. We are actually
Yes.
the most affordable and best debt in the city. So please share that amongst your friends.
Yes, absolutely. There is a, just to go a little bit off topic, I believe it's 60% of our CUNY students go on full ride by federal or state grants, so they have no tuition liability. And then of the remaining 40%, there are loans, but 20% of that remaining 40%, 50% graduate debt-free. But one of the problems is that we do have an income gap, and research shows that it is people of color who are low income that are most likely to drop out of school because of debt. So it is one of those things where I think myself, the president, and Governor Cuomo are all trying to figure out how do we make sure everyone who goes to school has the ability to graduate. So sorry for the ask, but all honesty, I was frustrated that I had to go to MIT Media Lab to launch the Free Law Founders. So I was very glad to connect with GovLab and be doing this coaching course. I'd love to do it with. I'd love to work with CUNY to make sure we get our students involved in civic tech. And I know that I have oversight over Doris, and I know CUNY has a bunch of students involved in that, and I have an amazing internship program. So if you know anyone who's a college student or a graduate student, I have 12 graduate students in social work, and I have a summer internship program for about 50 undergrads, which is a lot of fun. Next question, or comment, or discussion.
I have two. The first is there a scorecard for our elected officials in terms of civic technology? I don't actually know what Stephen Levin is doing in this realm. Is there an easy way to find that out?
Once every 4 years, we have an election. And during those elections, we get hundreds of surveys. And we get surveys about everything from horse carriages to women's reproductive health, which is why I gave out the NYC condoms. No one has ever, actually, Citizens Union is fairly big on transparency, and the closest thing you will get is either a preferred candidate or a non-preferred candidate. The funny part about these questionnaires is, so Gail Brewer is an elected official I look up to. Citizens Union is in favor of term limits. I'm in favor of term limits. Gail Brewer is against term limits, always has been, always will be. On her questionnaire, she wrote down, I'm against term limits. She was honest with them and gave them the answer they didn't want to hear, and they still gave her an endorsement. It's funny because all the other borough presidents, two of the other borough presidents who responded to the questionnaire said they were in favor of term limits and then reversed their position afterwards. So that being said, you have an opportunity in 2017, you have an opportunity in 2016 when we have the state elections to work with the Beta NYC community, or even a smaller community if you wish, to ask people questions like, do you commit to putting your legislation online? Do you commit to taking questions through AskThem.io or another public correspondence medium? Do you commit to having a Twitter account, a Facebook account? Do you commit to tweeting at least once a week? Do you commit to live casting things or videoing everything you do and releasing it afterwards? We have a great YouTube channel, by the way. Please watch it. I have no clicks whatsoever. But key thing is, during elections, you have an opportunity to really do so. The other opportunity is for you to work with one of the more civic-oriented tech groups like reInvent Albany or the Transparency Working Group to go through legislation like some of the stuff I listed and prioritize it. Are you a sponsor on this bill? Have you voted for this bill? And things like that. So the quick answer is no, it doesn't exist, but I'd love for you to create it.
You got it. And then the
Yes.
second one is you've done an exemplary job of using technology to solicit participation and feedback from your constituents.
It's 1:30, but you can just keep.
Yes, yes, you got it. Thank you.
Yes, what role
No, I actually, the next thing I have after this is I have to speak at an inauguration, but I can be a little bit late because there's like 20 elected officials speaking.
So what role does this technology play into the accountability side? And once you've solicited these ideas and how do you then check to see if you're doing it?
Do you need the room or?
No, you don't need the room, but you can keep on going. But I just want to say that Colin Riley, who's going to be doing a session on New York City GIS data, he's the head of the GIS department at DoIT. Really unique opportunity to interface with him. He's in the red room, and then Tej from Socrata, who's doing an introduction to the City's open data portal. He's kind of their service rep, is in the green room. So those things are starting now.
Okay,
Thanks.
please feel free to leave right now. I will give another 15 minutes on this time box for anyone who wants to stay and have a conversation. And then I have 15 minutes reserved for one other person to have a different conversation. Yeah.
Yes, so this was a question that was gleaned from the Twitter feed from the other cities we put across. So with New York and with what's going on with Open Down in New York, how do you feel that can be adapted for other cities and even the federal government, as that one commenter from DC asked?
Okay, so let me first answer the first question about accountability. So when I was sitting in your chair in 2013 running for office, I thought a lot about accountability. And it was all about holding elected officials accountable. And now that I'm an elected official, I actually think about it as a two-directional way. So how many asks? I think I had 3 concrete asks. So you came here to hold me accountable, and I'm already holding you accountable. So when I see you next year and you say, oh, why hasn't this bill passed? You were talking about it. Aren't you another do-nothing legislator that just introduces bills to say you're doing something? I'll be able to push back and say, well, did you send a letter to anybody? Did you tweet anybody? Did you do any of the different advocacy things I could say around the legislation? So the interesting piece is, yes, it's important for accountability. The more we can get into open data, the better. And it works for accountability. In terms of legislation, especially on policy, policy is where people disagree the most. And there's a real opportunity. What I've in a public conversation around policy, the more public, the better, because instead of it being the typical situation of saying, why aren't you supporting the horse-drawn carriage ban? I'm undecided. So I have people on both sides of the fence yelling at me nonstop. But when I do my first Fridays, and one person says, I want you to ban the horse carriages, and then the rest of the room starts yelling at them, and then the room devolves into a moderated fight over the issue, and then the people say, Ben, what's your position? I say, I'm undecided. And they say, well, why? And I was like, because of what just happened. So what I find is that it's very useful for accountability, but the piece that I'm trying to get other elected officials to see in terms of the courageous part about it is people are smart, and if you show them that an issue is controversial, they will actually begin to understand. So all the tools are out there. Use FOIL to get the information you need. The other question is, how can we use this elsewhere? What isn't in this presentation, because it's a very uniquely local piece, is I do a presentation with some of these slides for Free Law Founders or Local Progress called the Democracy Toolkit. So what do you need for democracy? You need freedom of information law, you need open data law, you need certain key laws. 311 is huge. We take it for granted in New York City because we've had it since 2001. Anyone here from a place that doesn't have 311? So most of the country still doesn't have it yet. So the more we can set the standard and then have ambassadors like myself or yourselves going all over the country to other municipalities or talking to your friends saying, like, you need 311, you have to get it, it's awesome. The better you can do. I actually submitted to the Digital Democracy Commission in the United Kingdom testimony about all the cool things we have here that they should take there. And so it's an idea of open sourcing our democracy. Okay, so I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. Anyone? 5, 6, and then we will be done with questions. Unless 7? Okay, go.
PDF data publishing culture. I'm assuming it's desktop text and agency-wide pasting Excel tables into a Word document and publishing as PDF. I mean, is that typically how it's done?
Yes.
Okay.
We hate
Is
it.
there any way of changing that?
Yes. The open data law already says that it shouldn't be done. It's supposed to be computer readable. That being said, anytime you see it, send a letter to the agency. Send a letter to your elected officials. Send me a letter. If you live in Manhattan, send it to Gail. Send a copy to Gail Brewer. We will follow up. The NYPD has started to release a lot of their data in Excel files now instead of PDFs. Still not where it needs to be. They're still taking things down and not allowing for archival data. But anytime you see it, let us know. And you are the eyes and ears. You can create a digital trail, and we can make sure that we get as much out there out of PDF as possible. The other thing that really moves the bar is when you write a PDF scraper for that type of data, they kind of just give up and say, okay, fine. And so the NYPD, there was a PDF scraper, and they kind of gave up. Yes?
So 2 questions that are interrelated. So first, thank you for taking the initiative and trying to rebuild the public trust in government.
That's actually, thank you for noticing what I'm trying to do.
It's obviously a hard journey, but along those lines, where because people have lost faith in government and leaders in general, obviously the mentality of ask for forgiveness instead of permission has come about. So when people do things that are technically in violation of law, but they believe it's to make the city better or something like that, what are you or other elected officials doing to try to meet them halfway so that we can kind of get back to this whole citizens collaborating with government? And then the second question is, you mentioned earlier that part of your challenge is that you have to win over all your colleagues, right, who are other fellow city elected officials. So besides using peer pressure, are there other colleagues that you feel that we can go to, because obviously you're not a representative of everybody, but do you have specific names that maybe are our district? Like, for example, I'm a Brooklyn native, so is there somebody from Brooklyn, that maybe we can go to? Because you're saying talk to our officials, but if we know who the officials are that are already open to this, maybe we can tip them over to make it easier.
So first piece is with regards to legality. I suggest you touch base with Jonathan Askin at the Blip Incubator and Clinic. They can work with you to make sure that whatever you are doing is as close to legal jurisdiction as possible. Technically, scraping has been treated by the courts as trespassing in the past, but they can work with you to make sure that the trespass is a civil violation instead of a criminal violation and provide you with the insulation that you need to be protected. When I put all the voting records online in Albany, I did it through a nonprofit. The standard of care for a nonprofit to be criminally liable for trespassing is tortious negligence versus simple negligence. So there can be certain things you can do that can protect you from Yeah, it's Blip, and so you can contact my office, and I'm happy to put you in touch with them. But that is something. The arm of the law is scary for all of us, especially when you're trying to do something that those in power don't like. So my suggestion is to lawyer up, and Blip is the right place. They're really great, and if not, I'm happy to work with you. I'm an attorney, and I can't counsel you to commit a crime, but we'll work with you to try to protect you. The second question is. Yeah, I just did a presentation on this. I have 168,000 people in my district, 90,000 registered voters, 50,000 of them are blank. Of the 50,000 that remain, 30,000 are Democrats, 12,000 are registered with 12,000 or something, or 10,000 are Republicans, and 3% are minor parties. Of the 30,000 that are, of the 50,000 that are Democrats, 10,000 never voted. Of the 40,000 that remained, 10,000 only vote for president. Of the 30,000 that remain, I believe 16,000 only vote in presidential or congressional primaries, which takes me down by 7,000 votes, which means that we're talking about very small margins. I pay attention to all 168,000 and sometimes 8.4 million to my detriment. There is no one more important, that was a very long way of saying, there is no one more important to an elected official than their own constituent. I could send you to a key person that is a blocker to me, but if you don't live in their district, you don't matter to them. So that is something to keep in mind. And how many people are registered to vote? Okay, how many are registered with a party? Okay, those of you who are not with the party, the only election that has significance in this city is the Democratic primary, unless you live in one of the 3 Republican districts. And of those 3, actually only 2 of them are actually Republican, because one of them is just a Democratic district that a Republican has managed to hold. And just to be very clear, I focus on all 168,000, but when they do a poll, they're polling registered likely voters, and those are the triple primes. Your voter registration information is public information, and your voting history is public information. So that is how they do targeting, that is how they do polling. And that is the deep, dark, dirty secret of politics, because it is that 6,000 people in the Democratic Party pulling left, and however many thousand in the Republican Party pulling other way, and the rest of the people aren't part of the conversation.
Yeah, hi. I'm actually from Nassau County.
Yes.
And would you kind of replicate the laws that you're proposing
Yes.
where I live?
Yes.
Because it's
Are you in the county legislature yet, or?
The county legislature is this year. They've been around since 1996. 10 of them are still there. They're useless. They just take money. They just take contracts. It's completely opposite of what we're doing here. The other thing I want to ask, with the GovLab coaching or whatever, what's the requirement to participate with that?
Have a team, have a project you want to work on.
Okay.
And the quick thing is, everything I'm working on is trying to export the model. So that's why I'm here, showing you where it is, literally as close as I can to spoon feeding. I'm giving you the URL, this is where it is, download it, give it to somebody else. So yes, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes.
So, City of New York spends billions of dollars on IT every year.
Yes.
One of the biggest challenges, I think, to civic tech and innovation is procurement and becoming a vendor. And it seems like oftentimes there's small startup or emerging companies which may have a great idea, but more often if the city wants to actually do something, they'll go with kind of the standard larger companies which are procured and already on the schedule. They're not doing an RFP. They can just kind of have them. Is there a way to fix that so that there's more opportunities for companies to participate?
Please help me pass my Free and Open Source Act. But for the companies with proprietary software as well, if you know anyone who's gone through setting up their company in the procurement system, let me know. I'm happy to sit down with them and go through the workflow and the use case and have a better understanding on how to improve it. I'm really focused on supporting the free and open source software community by creating a preference. So please, if we can change the legislation so that it favors free and open source software. Ultimately, we do have to overcome the fact that I believe the quote is no one's ever been fired for hiring IBM. Even if, like, I think they paid a very big corporation for healthcare.gov. I think that if they had just used a free and open source platform, we would not have had the same situation. So key is having code that is supported and having code that has a larger product owner. When people say, well, open source is bad, I say, well, most people use MySQL and the city's using it, and Oracle is the product owner there. And if something breaks, you can call Oracle, but in the meantime, we can pay a small company to support the MySQL farm that we may need, or we can hire city employees. So the quick thing is, please help on the Free and Open Source Software Act. For those people you know who are registering as vendors, let me know how I can improve it. And then if you have specific places where you think there's room for procurement to be fixed, let me know. This is actually an area that I've been focused on, but either you know how procurement works and you don't want it fixed, or you're on the other side, and most of the tech folks I sit down with are startups or people who are already have multi-million or billion-dollar companies, and I say, hey, can you give me like 10 minutes of your time on this issue? And they're like, I've got 500 employees, or I have 5 employees, and they're depending on me to get a job and keep their lights on here and at home. I don't have time for government. So the fact that you're here on a Sunday is huge, but I need you to take homework back with you to work with us on continuing. But I have 2 years, 10 months, and another 7 days to get something done, but I can't get the kinds of things we need to get done alone. There was 2 others, so ladies first. Or
Thank you for speaking. It's really appreciated. So 2 questions. One on GovLab. Is there any other way any of us can contribute or be involved with GovLab beyond joining the course that you mentioned? And second question, maybe a bit longer. How do you advocate in your policy negotiations?
So there's 12 other courses at GovLab. So if mine isn't the right for you, take a look at their site. There's a whole bunch. I know that somebody who spoke yesterday, the head of analytics, has their course. Question on GovLab, not really for me. Feel free to reach out. It's a great team, and you might like it. The course I'm doing is free because it's being paid for by Knight Foundation. And then how do I negotiate? That's a very open-ended question. The quick piece is on certain legislation, the negotiations are easier because everyone sits around the table and it's like, this is kind of a no-brainer. We should do this. Sometimes when I'm dealing with somebody, there's somebody on the other side of the table. So specifically, if I'm fighting for free and open source, the open source developers aren't even at the table because they're focused on just building code. On the other side of the table, Microsoft has a lobbyist. Oracle has a lobbyist. So that can be a very tough and hostile negotiation. And that's where it comes down to the fact that the people can outnumber a lobbyist, because if all the people who used a free and open source software product came out to their elected official and said, like, I can't afford $500 for the Office suite, so I use LibreOffice, and I really think that you should too, they can do that. I think one other thing we should try to do is create a culture, whether it's with the media or the populace, saying, you know what, we will tolerate failure. We are willing to tolerate a product that isn't enterprise. We are willing to tolerate a product where when there's something that's broken, you fix it, and that it isn't a scandal. And how many of you use a beta product? And if you use Google, every single product they've got is almost in beta. I think they just took the beta off Google Mail like 2 years ago. So Google is one of the largest companies in the world, and they've made a world of just releasing beta products, saying, listen, things may go wrong. I've been trying to do beta with city procurement and city pieces, city software, and it's been outright rejected. There is no tolerance for putting something out in a beta type where you're expected to have mistakes happen. Last question, sir.
Ben, back in mid-60s, federal government allocated funds for designing programs. What they did was, they gave $40 million to the state of New York to develop an engineering program to design a bridge for Hudson River. And they gave the span length to design the whole thing. That program was incorporated in every state. They developed a program for the whole nation as a whole. And whoever implemented the program, say, state of Vermont, they had their own conditions, more snow. So they had to revamp the program, that's not a problem. Whereas in Dallas, Texas, or Florida, they don't have to worry about the frost or other conditions. So where did they miss it? This was done in 1960s to develop a program for large engineering projects. Now we have, the common building or common attendance, City of New York, with, I read in the paper that they started with the 7 million contract with up to 70 million. My question is, it's wonderful we have all the laws, but enforcing the laws and accountability, that's what I believe is missing. And if they develop a program for the whole nation as a whole, what should we go on piece by piece? And where did they miss it? The 60s to now, they missed the whole, everybody went on to have Microsoft and Oracle and other vendors came in and took over.
So the quick piece is government is cyclical. So every time you have to elect somebody, they're getting elected because they want to do something different. Otherwise, you're re-electing the same person with the same choice. So what I've found is that it's a pendulum. So when we have big government, people are advocating for lean government. When we have lean government, everyone's advocating for big government. Why? Because that's the current status, so I have to advocate for something different. So as a result, we see our society and our government in a manic phase where it's very bipolar and it goes from one extreme to the other and don't really have a commitment to a middle road. Similarly, when you're talking about bridge design or any type of software design or big capital construction, the people who are advocating for low-cost savings and low-cost products are going to have fewer resources than those with larger. And so ultimately, there's a lot that we need to do on campaign finance. New York City is a unique microcosm where I don't have to worry about corporations, though they can spend because of Citizens United. But the electorate is fairly informed and educated and resistant to Citizens United spending in this city. But ultimately, the laws are changing. They're being driven by lobbyists. They're being driven by other forces. They're being driven by elected officials who don't know who to trust. And there's a bunch of people who are saying, oh, free and open source might work, but then there's Microsoft showing up saying, come on, we're Microsoft. You know us. You can trust us. Let's stick with Microsoft. And then you also have decision makers who are being asked to do analysis. And unless there's a lot of people in the room who are in government, which actually is really exciting. Actually, I would love to do a program with CUNY where we give every single student at CUNY like a USB drive with like LibreOffice and all the types of tools they might need. That's actually on our list of things we want to do as a campaign to try to convince people that they want to use it, because one of the cool pieces is like if the government buys it, the people get it for free. The quick thing is the government is cyclical, and ultimately using the transparency tools, if you're able to go through the contracts and work with a team of people, you can find the data and then you can share it with one of the 3 reporters in the room or you can put it on your own blog, and ultimately also try to work with other vendors in the area to fix it. So I think I've answered all the questions. The reason we said town halls, it was hopefully trying to be more of a discussion, so I'm always happy to have more of a discussion. You can tweet me at Ben Kallos, you can stop by First Fridays, and thank you very much. If you can give yourselves a round of applause. No, we just need to somebody needs to manipulate the existing data. I have. Nice.